The climate has its own morals. You're either making it better or you're making it worse. It's very organic. You start to save, you'll fix leaks, you'll find stuff that you didn't know happened, and you'll just incorporate it into your life. So it's not actually that hard. Offsets in the climate world have gotten a bad name. The reason that they've gotten a bad name, yes, there's been fraud, but this comes from the oil industry. The idea that big oil companies are out there just burning oil and getting us all addicted to it. And these things called offsets, these sort of magical accounting methods, all big oil companies has to do is write a big fat check and they can continue to do all the bad things that they're doing. That's the perception of it. Is there some truth to that? Probably. I'm not going to defend any of it. But the truth is, if someone who's doing something really bad can find a way very quickly to do something really good to balance it out, isn't that a good thing? That's the way I look at it. So I always look at things through a climate lens, and it's very simple. I say, you're either doing better or you're doing worse. And for this whole climate morality thing, the climate doesn't care what I think. It doesn't care what you think. It doesn't care what anyone thinks about this stuff. It only cares what we do. An example I always pick on is back in November, the world convened a big energy saving conference in Dubai. It's the big yearly conference for the climate. And the reason that 70,000 people went to Dubai, which is the most oil-rich country in the history of the planet, everyone flies to Dubai to talk about how much we hate oil. And people are celebrating. Look at this fantastic conference we just did. We're hugging each other and saying, look at all this great things we did. And I just keep going, wait a sec, we just flew 70,000 people and burned oil. The footprint of that oil hating conference is phenomenal. So we may think we're doing awesome stuff and we may think we're moral and things like that, but the climate is choking. That's the only thing that matters, and that's the way I look at offsets. So it's a very pure way to look at it, but it's also the most climate-friendly way to look at it. The climate has its own morals. You're either making it better or you're making it worse, and it's very simple. That's a great way to think about this. When you're trying to balance that scale and the bad things that we're doing, that's the stuff we talk about all day. We're all trying to make that a little bit better, but on the good side, you have to ask yourself, are you really doing good? Or are you just doing less worse? Low-calorie donut idea. It's like, I've got to lose 100 pounds. I have 10 donuts a day habit. If I swap those 10 donuts with low-calorie donuts, can I declare victory? Am I losing weight? No, I'm still eating 10 donuts a day. They're just making me less fat. At some point, I actually have to go on a diet. I actually have to exercise. I actually do good things. So offsets always have to keep that in mind. And there's a way to fix it, and there's a way to restore integrity. But you have to start with that in mind. You have to start with stepping away from a spreadsheet and actually saying, I'm actually going to do good to balance out the bad. And you have to be very clear what the good is. And in the climate business, supposedly the culprit is too high levels of carbon dioxide, CO2. We always hear about how bad that is. And I won't get into the philosophy of that and whether or not it really is. And there's thousands of people working to define that. But I look at this and I say, we're either adding CO2 or we're removing CO2, because the goal is to lower it. Unfortunately, if you look at it through that lens, everything adds CO2. Our breathing adds CO2. And there's very few things that we manufacture anyway that lower CO2. So a tree and all of nature, they remove CO2. The oceans remove CO2. We're starting to make products, technologies that suck CO2 out of the air and actually remove it like a big vacuum. And there's a whole group of people who hate that for the reason that we can't let oil companies just remove all the damage they're doing, because then it just lets them keep doing stuff. And of course, my view is, don't we want them to remove all the damage, right? Again, morality aside. So I look at this and I go, EVs are fun to drive, but if you do the math, they're adding CO2. Maybe instead of having your car be this much of an impact, it's this much, but it's a low-calorie donut. I'm still eating donuts. The biggest lever that we all have that no one wants to do actually is use less stuff. Everyone starts to think about sacrifice and scarcity and things like that, but reducing our own energy footprints by 10% is really not that hard. Same with water. What we have found in the water business is just the simple act of installing a monitoring system on your house. A house with a monitoring system versus a house without a monitoring system, it's usually about 15% savings. Just the fact that you're looking at the numbers and you're going, dang, I didn't know that. It's very organic. You start to save, you'll fix leaks, you'll find stuff that you didn't know happened, and you'll just incorporate it into your life. So it's not actually that hard. So I always encourage people, just start to think about using less stuff. Don't go out and buy a $50,000 car that's actually increasing our consumption. Maybe you just make your car last an extra couple of years, work at home one day a week, and do some of the simple things that you can actually do. You can now buy shares of farms that suck up CO2 from the atmosphere. You as a consumer can do that. I'm a believer in that. Natural solutions to help save nature make sense to me. And they truly are removing things. And then if you're a business and you can only get so far, you can only do so many things. The only thing you can do is really reduce your footprints as much as possible. Certainly getting cleaner energy, maybe changing operational procedures to streamline operations and things like that, and doing the things that you can do within your facility make perfect sense. Reducing consumption and maybe replacing bad things with things that are comparatively better. Is it better to eat 10 donuts that are low calorie than regular donuts? Sure. Okay. It's less bad, no doubt. But it's also important to not pretend that low calorie donuts are broccoli. Whatever we're trying to do, whether or not it's on the electricity side or the water side, we can trick ourselves and look at our spreadsheets and think that we're doing awesome. I always say we got to start with the truth and work from there. And I get into a lot of arguments with people about whether or not electric vehicles are better, or solar is better, or wind, or all these other alternatives are better. And of course, they are comparatively better, but let's not confuse that with actually making things better. So one of the tendencies that we have found, if think about yourself personally, if I'm now switching over to low calorie donuts, I probably will sneak a few extra donuts, won't I? Because now I know the psychology of it is I'm not as bad as I was. So even if I eat 7 low-calorie donuts, I'm still 3 less than I was. We've proven this with providing products like with EVs now. We're showing comparisons of driving these cars 250,000 miles. I'm like, so we're actually increasing consumption, increasing your need to drive just so the economics work out. And we're trying to solve an overconsumption problem with lots more consumption. It defies logic a little bit. So it's hard to make that case. Of course, do better. Let's find cleaner energy alternatives. Let's drive less. If getting an EV helps you get rid of one car and retire something that's doing way worse, and it allows you to drive less and just be more efficient, there's nothing wrong with that. That actually helps. So I encourage us to do things like that. But I also encourage us to do some truthful accounting and make sure that when we think that we're doing good, we're actually doing good, because otherwise it's just doing worse slower. With water, it's very immediate. That's one of the pluses, but also the negatives about water versus electricity. Carbon is one of these really weird things you can buy. If some company in Brazil saves over what their allocation is, then you can buy their right to pollute and then take credit for it and cheer yourself on. And in some ways it works, but it's hard to get your head around. What is a ton of carbon? Is it as big as a Volkswagen or what? With water, I need that water. There's no denying it. And so if you're a beverage company, you need to secure a supply of water, because you sell water. And so you have to be able to find it and make sure that it's secure, and it's a physical asset that you actually have to manage. So it's just a different beast. It's a whole different animal. If you're a water sustainability director and you are struggling to meet your company's water goals, please reach out to me directly at mcortez@liquidatewater.com. I think we can help.